Hi, I'm Bill from CJ Pony Parts. With its turbocharged engine, all-wheel drive, and killer brakes, the performance of the Focus RS is no joke right out of the package. Now, we've talked a couple times, if you're serious about tracking this car, there's a few upgrades you want to make, but one we haven't talked about is going to be the suspension. And while the factory suspension is adjustable, we all know if you're serious about tracking a car, coilovers are the way to go. Today I've got Angel here from Pedders Suspension. He's going to tell us about their coilover kit for the Focus RS and give us a hand installing it. Tell us about this kit and why you'd want to put this on your RS.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me in the shop again.
Thanks for coming.
Again, the kit, as you said, the car is an astounding package out of the box, but there is some room for improvement. And particularly in terms of adjustability and tailoring the ride and handling to your own uses and your own likes. And this kit really offers you the ability to do that with both adjustable dampening, adjustable ride height, and then camber caster plates included.
All built in right from the box.
All built right out of the box.
And this is going to be a direct replacement strut assembly, so no pieces from the factory get transferred over.
No,
just bolt on.
Remove and replace.
Tell us about the rear setup here a little bit here.
The rear setup is, of course, a divorced spring setup here, but the perch here allows you to adjust the ride height either up or down. And again, we set them here sort of in the middle, which is a good catch-all for most people's needs, but you're free to adjust it from there. And then we've got 30-way adjustment for damping on the rear shocks.
Okay, so someone who's serious about tracking this car really can dial their suspension in.
Exactly that, yeah.
What kind of drop are we talking factory? I mean, our car's already been lowered at one point.
Right, from the factory height, we're talking probably close to 2 inches out of the way it comes out of the box.
And then adjustability within probably 1.5 inches.
Easily. I mean, if you go through the full sweep, it's probably about a 3-inch range.
Okay, we'll get started with the installation.
All right, thank you.
For this installation, with a lift and a pole jack or a jack and jack stands, 3/8 ratchet, 8mm socket, 10mm socket, 12mm socket, 13mm socket, 14mm socket, 15mm socket, 5mm Allen key, T30 Torx bit, short extension, 15mm wrench, clip removal tool, panel removal tool, small flathead screwdriver, large Phillips head screwdriver, pry bar, and a hammer. Now, I've obviously done the installation on the Focus a couple times now. I'm going to get Angel to handle it for me today. We're going to start up front. You have to access the bolts for the front struts. They're actually hidden under the cowl. And a lot of times people tell you to remove the entire cowl assembly. That can kind of be a pain to put back on, so we're going to show you a little trick to make it easier. The cowl is actually a 2-piece assembly, so what you can do is separate the lower from the upper, remove the lower, and that'll allow us to get to the bolts without taking apart the whole cowl and the wiper assemblies. Now we're going to remove this seal. Simply grab it on the edge, just give it a tug. The whole thing will pop off. Now you can see actually the separate cowl. It is a 2-piece. Next thing on the move are these 4 clips. Okay, now remove the cowl vent covers. These simply just pop off. They clip in place. And we've got 2 bolts to remove underneath. Okay, now with that out of the way, we can remove the lower cowl. With the cowl off, now you can access the 3 bolts. We're going to remove 2 of them, leave the 3rd one tight for now. All right, down on the wheel well. The first thing we're going to do is remove this bolt to remove the brake line from the strut. And now let's remove the ABS line. There's no tools required, just unclip it from the strut itself and from the brackets, and then we're going to move on to the sway bar. All right, now we're going to remove the sway bar end link. Just the top end link has to come off. It's actually the bracket for the ABS line as well. What you have to do is actually use an Allen key to hold the center while you turn it with a wrench. Now we're going to separate the spindle from the strut. The first thing to do is remove this bolt entirely. Don't worry, it's pressed in there, nothing's going to fall off. Now that is actually threaded on the other side. So what we're going to do now is take the bolt, put it in from the other direction. We're going to put a piece of metal in there, put that between the threads. So the bolt threads in, it pushes against the metal, and it'll actually spread out the spindle assembly, allow us to separate the strut. Once the bolt touches the metal, it'll start to spread. You don't want to go too far. Just do it to get a little bit of play in the strut. Once the spindle is separated in the back, pretty much now you sort of have to just work it down off of the strut. This can be kind of a pain. But if you shimmy it right, it will come off. Now I'll release this top bolt so the strut comes off. Now this part here is definitely a two-man operation. Once you have the strut out and someone's holding it, you gotta release this line here. This is for the factory adjustable suspension. You're gonna pop it out of the clip and disconnect it over here as well.
Now, due to the design up front, there's a brace that actually covers this top bit, so you won't actually be able to access the adjustment knob. So you'll want to make those adjustments now, or in the future you'll have to remove the strut brace to be able to do so.
When you put this in, you want to make sure the orientation is correct. Your caster camber adjustment should go side to side. You'll have one stud that'll go towards the outside edge. We'll put the washers and nuts on here just to hold it for now. Gives us a little more play to get it in the spindle, and then we'll tighten these up later. Now we're going to back the bolt out and put it on the other side. Use the jack to lift up the spindle onto the strut, and then tighten it back down. What we're going to do now is actually just lift up the other wheel, because the sway bar locations are off just a little bit. All right, with that tight, now we can reconnect our ABS line. All right, so the last step down here now is to reconnect the brake line to the bracket on the strut, and then I'm gonna move back up into the engine bay. All right, now back to the cowl area, we're gonna tighten down the bolts that go through the strut tower. All right, you wanna repeat the process on the other side and then move on to the rear. Now we're going to move on to the rear. The first step in the rear is we have to disconnect the electrical connection for the shock so we can remove it. To do that, these little access panels in the back here, just pop off the plug. Now to start at the rear, we're going to remove the shock. We're going to do the shock and spring actually separately. The shock, there's a bolt down at the bottom and then two nuts up at the top. Now if you wanted to, you could remove the spring first if you're using it on the, especially if you're doing it on the ground, and you can get to the bolt a little bit easier, but a ratcheting wrench will get the bolt out without a problem. And then to remove the shock, just remove the two small nuts at the top. Right now to remove the spring, you're going to support the spring perch, and then remove this bolt here. Okay, now we'll lower this down, remove the spring. Should just pop out. You may need a small pry bar, but it should just pop out. What we're going to do now is put the shock back up into place. We're just going to bolt it to the lower. That way when we actually lift the control arm whole suspension up, then we can bolt the spring in and bolt that at the same time. Just get it snug, don't over tighten it yet so you have a little bit of adjustment when we put the shock up into place with the top.
Now at this point, we're ready to put the rear coil spring into its perch. There's a detent, or rather a cutout on the bottom here. You need to make sure that the spring is clocked correctly, because that'll keep away any unwanted noises and movement. And now we're ready for the adjustment perch. That'll sit on top.
Now the suspension supporter, we can reinstall this bolt. Now this part will be a little tricky. Sometimes you have to actually get in here and sort of pry it to straighten it out to make sure the bolt goes through. Now once that bolt's tight, now we're going to actually jack the whole assembly up into place. You want to make sure your spring is seated straight and line up the shock. All right, now we're going to reinstall the original hardware to hold the shock in place. Got everything tight up top. Now we're going to tighten up the rear shock bolt at the bottom, and then we can repeat the process on the other side.
All right, well, we've mentioned several times about the adjustability of the system. Now, with regards to that, the way they come out of the box, they're pretty much ready to bolt in. But if you were to change the ride height, you need to take into consideration your final spring height, which is adjusted here via the adjustable perch, and then match that on your shock. So you're going to loosen this and thread the body up or down so as to keep the shock in the middle of its travel. You don't want it to hyperextend or to be on its bump stops constantly.
All right, the suspension installed. Now the last step is going to be to reinstall the cowl. Okay, reinstall the vent covers. And the last thing is the seal. The look of the car is exactly what I wanted stance-wise. I mean, you don't want to slam this car to the ground with the performance capabilities of the RS. You just don't want that. You want the performance. And I think we're going to get it with our Pedders suspension.
No, agreed. I mean, and again, all the adjustability is there, so it can be tailored to the individual owner's use and needs. But yeah, the way it's set up right now, I think it's perfect to bomb a few back roads.
And you saw the installation is pretty straightforward. You're probably talking about maybe 3 hours total. Be back on the road in no time.